You make me feel so young.
Yvonne Brent, it was Yvonne Bloom. I was born on the 6th of October 1947 and I went to Brady from the age of 12 and a half till 18.
I'm Paul Brent. Date of birth 28th of March 1949. I went to Brady from 13 to 18, but then continued as an old boy playing football for Brady.
Well, we met here down at Skeet, actually. I had come down with my friend Irene and we came to the dining room a little bit late, and there was trellis tables and all the tables were full, so we started a new table. And all of a sudden this crowd of
Go on, say it, hooligans
ran into the room, joined our table and commenced throwing water all over the place and eating off of each other's plates, and generally disgusted, to be honest with you.
It was only a continuation of what we did at school.
That's what they told me, but they didn't do that at my school. So that's how we met down at Skeet. I think my second impression of Paul was bank holiday weekends, which were the mixed weekends. We always had a long walk to Pratt's Bottom.
Yeah.
And I don't know how far away it is actually, but it was a whole day event and we would have a picnic during the day. And all of a sudden, Paul jumped out of a tree and pushed me over. Because very romantic. He doesn't seem to remember it, but I do remember that. And that was my second time I met Paul.
I'd like to see evidence of that.
Yeah. And then he said, I'll meet you at club. And the following week we met at club in the canteen.
Only 58 years ago.
Yeah, it was Whitsun, 1964.
And when did you start thinking you liked each other?
About 5 years ago, I think. We were both quite young.
I don't think we were thinking about any distant future. And after club, Paul used to get one of his friends to walk me home because Paul had a dog. And the provision that his mother allowed him to have the dog was that he walked the dog every night. And so after club, he used to have to go home and walk the dog. So he would always get one of his friends to walk me home. It was just a very easy relationship. We made each other laugh a lot. Enjoyed the same things, liked to go dancing a lot. Dancing at the Tottenham Royal, I believe.
Tottenham Royal, yeah. Used to go to the cinema, used to go to the theatre.
Yeah, we just enjoyed each other's company. I don't know, because we were so young, it was too young to think about the future. You know, was one of us going to go off to university? Well, neither of us knew what was going to be in the future. So I think it was more then, what was happening then, not what's going to happen in the future.
But 8 years later.
Yeah, 8 years.
8 years later, we got married.
I think when we were about 18, 19, we were thinking that, that this is a long-term relationship. I can't really remember Paul proposing to me. He did tell me that he did, but I can't really remember it, so it couldn't have been very romantic or anything.
Well, it worked. Whatever it was, it worked.
I do remember when we first used to go out, he said to me, he said, do you want to go to pictures? I said, yes. He said, well, if you're not there by 7, I'll see you inside. I remember running down the road to get there by 7 o'clock.
How long have you been married now?
Well, in 2 weeks' time, 3 weeks' time, will be 50 years. Love is not looking into each other's eyes, but it's looking in the same direction and seeing the same things. And that's very much our ideas of our future. Most of our opinions are in unison with each other, and we just agree about most things. And if we don't agree about things, we discuss it. And even with children, the children always tend to try and play you off against one another. And we had this thing that we would say to them that, if you're asking me a question and you want an answer now, the answer's no. But if you want to give us time to talk about it together, it might be yes. It might still be no, but the chances are it might be yes. So we did everything in unison. We always have.
And I don't know if that's because we were so young and we grew up together, that we had the same outlook in life. We came from very similar backgrounds. My mother, I lost my father when I was young, but my mother had a newsagent tobacconist shop, and Paul's parents also had a newsagent tobacconist shop. So we both had responsibilities from a very young age, helping the family with the business. I think that had a lot to do with it because we had the same background, the same outlook.
Very much so, yeah.
And in fact, Paul and I ran a business together for over 30 years. So we were together 24/7, which was very happy years, to be perfectly honest with you. And when we actually sold the business, decided that the time was right to sell the business, we missed each other during the day because we both had jobs.
That was a difficult thing, getting used to not seeing each other all day, every day.
Wondering, do you think, just to bring it back to Brady a little bit, do you think that part of the purpose of Brady was to bring young men, young women together with a view to maybe possibly marrying in the future?
There's an element at Brady of providing an opportunity for Jewish youngsters to meet. And while the club was to a very, very large extent Jewish, it wasn't exclusively Jewish. It was an East End club, but it was an opportunity, A, for Jewish boys and girls to meet, and also quite a few of us went to single-sex schools. So if you didn't have that opportunity to socialise with the opposite sex, it sort of stunted your growth, as it were. So it was good. I was we were both at a school called Central Foundation. The girls' school and the boys' school were very, very loosely associated, but they were in completely different locations. And going to Brady was a chance to meet, and coming to somewhere like Skeet was obviously a chance to meet because this is where we met, but also it gave us an insight into taking responsibility. The first thing we did here, we'd have to go in the kitchen and start peeling potatoes for supper. After supper, we'd have to clear away, clean up after ourselves, do the washing up. There was a rota to clean the toilets and the showers, and the house had to be left spotless when we left. So we had to take responsibility for our own actions, and that was part and parcel of what we learned at Brady as children growing up, as teenagers growing up.
I think also being part of a team, because there was always lots of team games, especially on the Saturday we'd have Olympics.
If the weather was good.
If the weather was good, yeah.
We'd be outside. Otherwise, if it was bad weather, or we'd be in teams and we'd have games competing against each other, just to get that spirit of A, competition, and B, of unity.
I'm just wondering, going back to your relationships, I think, Yvonne, you mentioned at some point that there was a time when you wondered whether you should, because you've been together so long, whether you should maybe spend some time apart with it. Could you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, I think we was probably about 18, 19, that kind of age. We did discuss, because we hadn't had any other relationships. We hadn't been with anyone else. And in a way, how do you know you've got the right relationship if you haven't experienced something else? I think it lasted a week because I got too jealous about the whole thing. I assumed Paul was surrounded with all these women ringing him up and wanted to go out with him, and I didn't like the thought of that, so we knocked that one on the head and carried on.
So was it you who cut my phone line?
But no, it's just because you do wonder about these things, but then, you know, if it's, as they say, if it's not broke, what's the phrase?
If it's not broken, don't
fix it.
Yeah.
And you know, we had well, as you can see, we've got a really easy relationship. We have an old-fashioned relationship, I think. A younger woman wouldn't want our relationship. We have defined jobs. So I look after the catering and Paul looks after the transport. We define our jobs, if you like. I don't know. I don't think it's the modern way, but it suits us, and we're quite happy with it.
And do you think it was a good way to bring up your children as well in that sort of environment?
Well, my children, their biggest complaint was, because we don't argue, is that they never learnt to argue.
Our youngest daughter said, when I did something wrong and you'd sit me down and you'd give me a lecture, I just wish sometimes you'd just give me a smack.
Because they did get a lot of lecturing, I have to tell you that. A lot of talking to.
But you know, with your children, you never know if you've done right or wrong, and when you look back, you can make that decision. And I think, to a large extent, we did okay. As I say, we think the same way, and we discuss things. We don't find the need to argue. If it's important, we discuss it. If it's not important, there's no point arguing about it. So
I think a very big thing is that we respect each other. We never shout at each other or are sarcastic to each other, because I always think if he spoke to me like that, I wouldn't like it. So why would I speak to him like that? And I've always said that to my children when they were younger. And you know, sometimes children take liberties. They answer you back, and I always used to say to them, have I ever spoken to you like that, in that tone of voice? I think that a lot to do with respecting each other.
And do you think any of your success is down to Brady?
I think I'm a better person for going to Brady. I think I was a very spoilt child. I was the youngest, and I think it brought me out. It gave me confidence. I think it also I could compare myself to my peers. I went to a girls' grammar school, and at the time, it's not like these days. To go to a girls' grammar school, you've got to probably be in the top 1 or 2% of the nation. I mean, when I went to grammar school, we were in the top 20. The 25% of us went to grammar schools. So I doubt very much that I would have got into a grammar school now. But it did make me appreciate my education. And whilst I didn't extend my education because of family circumstances, and my mother needed me to go out to work, I appreciated what I had learned and the opportunities that I'd been given, and also the opportunities at Brady. I used to like to go to discussion group, and we could discuss anything at those meetings. You could talk about politics, you could talk about sex, you could talk about anything, and everything was out there. It was just a good place. I do think very fondly of, and the manager who took that was a guy called Ronnie Ziskin, and I appreciate his thoughtfulness when we used to have these discussions.
I think it helped me grow up. I had also had responsibilities at home, but come to Brady was an element of freedom. I could come and be myself to a large extent without having to worry about other things at home. It was to some extent a release, and it was a whole new range of friendships that I made at Brady that are still friends. You made friends for life. I'm talking about 60 years gone, and I'm still seeing and friends with the same people. And I don't know where you can get that sort of bond in any other sort of relationship. And as Yvonne said, the people who were the club managers, most of whom were volunteers, were interested in you as a person. It wasn't their profession. It wasn't like a teacher who was paid to give you attention. They just wanted to help. They wanted they did it from the goodness of their heart, I suppose, is a simple way to say it. And they gave their time freely, and they gave their support, and the interest they gave made you realise that there's an element of goodness in people that you don't always see, and you have to experience it. And I think that was one of the things that I learned at Brady, is that there are people who want to do things for you just because that's their nature. They are willing to help.
Do you think this learning and understanding of how people could be helped in your marriage?
that understanding of helping others and not being selfish helped in life generally. Yeah, it helped in marriage because you realise that your responsibilities are not just for yourself. There's another person who's more important than yourself, especially once you have children. You've got a responsibility for them. And I think seeing those sort of actions in people when you're young instills that idea in you as you get older.
One thing I didn't mention was being introduced to volunteering. I can remember from at Brady, myself and my friend used to visit an elderly lady and have tea with her once every other week. And whilst that, during when we were working, because we worked 60-hour weeks plus, so we never had a lot of time for volunteering, but once we stopped doing that, both of us went back to volunteering again. We'd already had a taste of what it gives you to volunteer, and certainly since we retired, we've both been very involved in volunteering.
The experience of Brady benefited us both greatly. You can't say what would have happened if you hadn't been there, but you can say that having been to Brady was a life-forming experience. I couldn't say life-changing because we don't know, but certainly it was forming our future and our outlook on life.
You make me feel so young. You make me feel so spring has sprung. And every time I see you grin, I'm such a happy individual.